I have a confession to make. I am completely addicted to the 2 a.m. epiphany. You know the one, right? You're lying there, staring at the ceiling, and then, bam, you decide. You're going to change everything. You're going to write the novel, run a marathon, learn French, and it's all going to start, like, precisely at dawn.
Ah, the hero moment. It's the montage sequence in every single movie. The music swells, the hero puts on the headband, and, 3 minutes later, their entire life is fixed.
Exactly. And it feels amazing. It feels so powerful. You buy the expensive running shoes, you pull that all-nighter to map out your business plan.
Yeah.
And you feel like you've already won. But, and here's the part that I think hurts all of us, by week 3? The shoes are in the back of the closet. The business plan is just a forgotten Google Doc, and you're just tired.
That is the intensity trap. I mean, we are culturally wired to worship the sprint. We look at the startup founder sleeping under their desk or the musician pulling these 20-hour studio sessions. We think, that's it. That's the secret.
That if we just push harder and faster, we'll break through.
Exactly. But the reality is that intensity is, well, it's incredibly unreliable. It's a flare. It burns bright, it burns hot, and then it just leaves you completely in the dark.
Which brings us to today's deep dive.
What?
We're unpacking a book that feels, frankly, like a personal attack on my entire work ethic. But, in the most necessary way possible. It's called Consistency Beats Intensity, and it's by engineer Reuben Juma Onunga.
And that title, engineer, is so important.
Right. This isn't a life coach.
No, and that distinction is everything. Onunga is not here to hype you up. He's a development practitioner and engineer. He looks at human performance the same way he'd look at a bridge or, like, a power grid. He's arguing the crash and burn cycle isn't a moral failing, it's a systems failure. He's basically saying that redlining your engine every single day is just, it's a design flaw.
So the mission today is to sort of debunk this myth that more effort equals better results. We're exploring what Onunga calls the quiet way. But I do have to push back a little right at the start here. Doesn't the world reward intensity? I mean, the viral hit, the record-breaking quarter, the overnight success, those are all intensity outcomes, aren't they?
Well, they look like intensity outcomes. That's the optical illusion. We see that moment of breakthrough, and we just assume it was created by the burst of energy right before it. But Onunga argues that if you look at the mechanics, the actual engineering of that success, it was the result of steady, boring, undramatic work over a long period of time.
So the overnight success is just the lagging indicator of, 5 years of invisible work?
Precisely.
Okay, let's get into the mechanics then. Because I think a lot of us feel that if we aren't suffering, we aren't working. The book starts by defining the trap of intensity. Why is this surge mentality actually dangerous, beyond just making us tired?
It's what he calls the surge, stall, recover cycle. He maps this out almost like a sine wave. You surge, that's your 2 a.m. motivation. But human energy is a finite resource. It's not an infinite well.
So you stall. The machine overheats.
Right. And then you are forced into the recover phase, where you're doing basically nothing because you're burnt out or maybe injured.
That's the guilt phase for me. I'm not working, so I feel terrible, which eventually stresses me out enough to trigger another surge. It's a whole cycle.
It is a cycle.
Yeah.
And if you integrate the area under that curve, sorry, a little bit of calculus there, your net progress is often 0. But there's a hidden cost that's even worse than the burnout. It's the judgment cost.
The judgment cost. What does that mean?
When you're operating at maximum intensity, your brain shifts into survival mode. You become purely reactive. You're just putting out fires. Onunga argues that high intensity actually distorts your ability to make strategic decisions. You stop asking, is this the right direction? And you just obsess over, how fast can I run?
That's actually frighteningly accurate. When I'm in a crunch, I'm not planning. I'm just trying to survive the next hour.
And that's where the engineering mindset is so key. A bridge that's built in a panic is going to collapse. A career built in a panic will probably do the same thing. Intensity relies on emotion, adrenaline, fear, excitement. But emotions are volatile variables. You can't build a stable structure on a volatile foundation.
So intensity is a supplement, not a substitute.
That's it. If it's your primary fuel source, the engine will eventually explode.
Okay, so if we retire the whole sprint until you drop strategy, what replaces it? The book talks about the mathematics of small repeats. This sounds slow.
And honestly, a little boring.
It is boring, and that's exactly why it works. The math here is all about compounding. Let's look at the numbers he uses. He compares 2 hypothetical people. Person A creates this surge of work, let's say 100 units of effort once every 2 weeks, but does nothing in between. Person B does 10 units of effort every single day.
My brain immediately likes person A better. It just feels more heroic. Of course it does. But over a year, person A might rack up, what, 2,600 units of effort? Person B gets 3,650. But here's the real kicker, the compounding effect. Skill acquisition isn't linear. The person who practices for 20 minutes a day keeps those neural pathways active. The person who crams for 5 hours, then takes a week off, actually has skill decay in their downtime.
So they spend the first hour of their next session just relearning what they forgot, the relearning tax.
Exactly. Onunga uses the example of a writer. The writer who waits for inspiration, which is just a fancy word for intensity, might write 10 pages in a furious burst once a month. The writer who produces 1 page a day, whether they feel like it or not, has a 365-page manuscript at the end of the year. The math doesn't care how inspired you felt. It only cares about the accumulation of volume.
But let's play devil's advocate. Writing 1 page a day is hard. Not physically hard, but mentally. It's unimpressive. You don't get that dopamine hit of, I crushed it today. How do you get past the fact that consistency feels, well, mediocre?
That is the boring truth part of the book. Onunga is demanding humility. He asks, are you willing to look unimpressive today to be undeniable tomorrow? We want the applause now. Consistency requires you to detach your ego from the daily result. You have to be okay with a workout that didn't make you vomit, you know.
You have to value the trend line over the single data point.
That's a perfect way to put it.
So let's assume we buy the math. We want to be consistent, but I'm a chaotic person. I have kids, a messy schedule. Just be consistent. Sounds like someone telling me to just be taller. How do we actually do this? This is where the book shifts to systems over willpower.
This is the core engineering chapter. Onunga says that willpower is like a battery. It drains through the day. If your consistency depends on you just white-knuckling it, you will fail. The goal is to design a system where the correct action becomes the path of least resistance.
The phrase design the daily came up, but let's get specific. This isn't just put your running shoes by the door, is it? How does an engineer approach it?
An engineer looks at friction. You want to reduce the friction for the behavior you want and increase it for the behavior you don't. But it's more nuanced than just the shoes. It's about your default settings. A system answers the question, if I do nothing active, what happens by default?
Give me an example of a default setting.
Okay, think about your phone. When you unlock it, what's the default screen? Is it social media? Or is it your reading app? That's a default. Or look at your finances. Is your saving automated a default transfer, or do you have to decide to save money every month? If you have to decide, that's friction. That uses up willpower. Onunga suggests habit stacking to help automate things.
I've heard of that, doing one thing right after another.
But he treats it like a logic gate in a circuit. If morning coffee, then review project plan.
Yeah.
You aren't deciding to review the plan, you're attaching it to a biological trigger caffeine that is already guaranteed to happen. You're piggybacking on reliable infrastructure.
I tried this recently, actually. I tried to design my environment by hiding the TV remote. I just ended up tearing the living room apart, looking for it 20 minutes later because I really wanted to watch a show. It didn't feel like engineering. It felt like I was just pranking myself.
That's a great point, and he addresses this. If the friction is too high, the system breaks. You have to find that Goldilocks zone. But the key takeaway is this. Stop trying to change your personality. You're not going to suddenly become a disciplined monk. Just change the environment so that your current flawed personality naturally stumbles into the right behavior.
What is visible is chosen. That line really stuck with me.
Precisely. If the donuts are on the counter, you're going to eat them. It's not because you're weak, it's because you're human. Remove the visual cue, and you remove the choice.
Moving deeper into the how, let's talk microdisciplines. This connects to mastery. We think of masters, virtuoso musicians or top coders, as having some magic spark. But the book says mastery is just, it's boring repetition.
It totally redefines mastery. Mastery isn't magic. It's the ability to tolerate the boredom of microdisciplines. The musician playing scales, the coder reviewing lines of syntax. These are small, repeatable practices that build up skill over time.
But isn't there a danger of just going through the motions?
There is, but the act of showing up day after day, it changes your identity. This is the big psychological shift. When you rely on intensity, your identity is, I am someone who can sprint. When you rely on microdisciplines, your identity becomes, I am a person who practices. It stabilizes your confidence. You stop wondering if you can do it because you are doing it every day.
Right. But even machines need maintenance. The book has this critical section on rhythm and recovery, and I want to be clear, this is not the bubble bath kind of self-care talk.
No, this is about structural integrity. Onunga argues that a life without rhythm violates design principles. In engineering, materials have something called a yield point. If you keep them under constant tension, they snap. Humans are the same. We just try to live in a constant on state.
He reframes rest as protection rather than a reward. I really struggle with that. I feel like I have to earn my rest.
And that's the toxic mindset of intensity. I worked hard, so I get a break. Onunga says, no, rest is protection against collapse. Recovery resets your capacity. If you skip it, you are basically borrowing energy from tomorrow at a predatory interest rate. And eventually, that bill comes due.
This connects directly to how we measure success. And this was maybe my biggest aha moment from the book. The difference between leading and lagging indicators, I think most of us track the wrong thing.
Almost exclusively, we track lagging indicators. Did I lose 5 pounds? Did we hit the sales target? Is the bridge built? These are just results. You can't directly control them today. You can only control the inputs.
So what's a leading indicator in this context?
A leading indicator is predictive. Did I eat 500 calories less today? Did I make 10 sales calls? Did I test the cement mixture? If you obsess over the scale, the lagging indicator, you get discouraged when it doesn't move. But if you obsess over eating the healthy meal, the leading indicator, you get the satisfaction of executing your system. He basically says, measure the input and the output will take care of itself.
It also seems like a much more forgiving way to live. If I miss my sales target, I feel like a failure. But if I made my 10 calls and just got unlucky, I can still feel successful because I executed the protocol.
Exactly. Good measurement invites re-entry. If you have a bad week, a bad system says, you broke the streak, you failed. A good system just says, your inputs were low, adjust the inputs today. It removes that whole shame spiral.
Okay, now we have to talk about the social layer. Because up to this point, this all sounds like a very lonely journey. Just me, my systems, and my leading indicators. But Onunga writes, the self left alone is vulnerable to self-deception.
We are so good at lying to ourselves. Oh, I'll do it tomorrow. I'm just too tired. Onunga argues that isolation kills consistency. But he's not talking about having a cheerleader friend who just sends you got this emojis. He's talking about normalizing difficulty.
That phrase really stood out to me. What does he mean by that?
When you're alone and things get hard, and they always will, you assume something is wrong with you. I'm not cut out for this. But if you're in a structured peer group, a study group, a mastermind, a running club, you see everyone else struggling too. The struggle stops being a signal to quit and it just becomes part of the process. It normalizes the pain so you don't panic.
It removes the drama. Which leads us to the drama chase. This section felt like it was written specifically about me. I love new, I love starting things, I hate the middle.
The drama chase is essentially a dopamine addiction. We're addicted to that feeling of a new beginning, the fresh notebook, the new app, the rebranding strategy. It feels like progress, but it's usually just motion. Onunga suggests installing guardrails against this.
Like what, for example?
Simple rules, things to protect you from your own novelty-seeking brain. For example, a 30-day waiting period before buying new gear or starting a new project. Or a rule that you cannot change your strategy until you've executed the current one for at least 6 months.
It prevents you from pivoting just because you got bored.
Exactly. It protects the boring middle from your desire for entertainment. It also stops you from comparing your messy middle to someone else's highlight reel on Instagram.
So let's zoom out to the final segment, winning the long game. Because ultimately we are doing this to win, right? But is consistency enough? Don't you need talent? Don't you need luck?
This is where he gives hope to all the non-geniuses among us. He admits, look, talent opens doors, and luck, volatile, random luck, it plays a huge role. But he argues that consistency is the luck capture mechanism.
The luck capture mechanism. I love that.
You can't control when lightning is going to strike. But if you are consistently out there in the field with a lightning rod, you're much more likely to harness it than the person who only runs outside when they hear thunder. Consistency just keeps you in the game long enough for luck to find you.
And then there's the whole factor of reputation.
This is an asset class we really undervalue. Being boring but reliable is a superpower. Think about the people you trust the most. Are they the erratic geniuses? No. They're the ones who say, I will do X, and then X happens. That builds what he calls trust capital. And over 10 years, that capital is worth more than any single burst of brilliance.
The book closes by talking about institutionalizing consistency. This is for the leaders listening, or even parents. How do we make this bigger than just ourselves?
You have to move it from a personal habit to a culture. If you run a team, do you reward the person who stayed up all night to fix a crisis they probably caused in the first place? Or do you reward the person who prevented the crisis with boring preventative maintenance months ago?
Ooh, that hits home. We usually throw a party for the firefighter, not the fire prevention officer.
Exactly. Institutionalizing consistency means building policies and traditions and incentives that value the long, quiet road. It's how you build a legacy that survives after you leave the room.
So we've covered the surgeon crash trap, the math of compounding, engineering your environment, and the need to normalize difficulty.
Yeah.
It's a lot, but oddly I feel relieved.
It should be relieving. The message isn't do more, it's do less, but do it without stopping.
Yeah.
You don't have to be superhuman, you just have to be steady. Success isn't measured by how fast you leave the starting blocks, it's measured by whether you're still moving forward when everyone else is burnt out.
So here is the provocation from the book to leave you with today. And it's a tough question. Are you willing to value what is boring today for what it becomes tomorrow?
That's the whole ball game right there.
Our challenge to you is to pick one small, unimpressive thing. Maybe it's a leading indicator,
Right on.
it's just hiding the remote control. Just do it. Don't post about it. Don't brag about it. Just repeat it.
Trust the math.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you on the long road.
Take care.